At 9:17 on a Monday morning, Grant Holloway stood in the great room of the mansion he planned to unveil in 25 days and told me to keep building with money he had decided not to pay. Behind him, 3 investors studied the 20-foot windows. Beside him, the architect held a red folder against her chest. On the marble sample table between us sat my approved payment application. $418,760, stamped, signed, and 17 days overdue. Grant tapped it once with 2 fingers. "You'll get paid when I'm satisfied the pace is where it should be," he said. "Until then, you keep the crews moving. You're the contractor, Malcolm. You don't decide when this project pauses." The room went still enough for me to hear a lift reversing outside. I thought about Friday payroll. I thought about the electricians who had already installed wire they had not been paid for, the stone fabricator holding 2 custom slabs under my purchase order, and the 43 families whose week depended on Reed-Built Construction, doing what it said it would do. Then I looked at Grant. "Are you certain you want that instruction in writing?" I asked. He smiled because he thought the question meant I was scared. "Put anything you want in writing," he said. "Just don't slow my house down." He believed I could not afford to stop. He had forgotten what he signed. That mistake would cost him. In one sense, he was right. This was the largest contract my company had ever signed, and the unpaid amount was dangerous enough to crack a healthy business. What Grant had forgotten was that 18 months earlier, when the mansion was still lines on paper, he had signed a rule for exactly this moment. I did not tell him what it would cost him yet. I simply picked up the payment application, wrote down the time, and followed the agreement he thought his money made optional. My name is Malcolm Reed. I was 42 then, a licensed general contractor, and the owner of Reed-Built Construction. I started the company with 1 used pickup, a borrowed concrete saw, and a belief that being dependable was not a marketing slogan. It was an operating system. By the time Grant hired us, we had 21 direct employees, a network of subcontractors I had worked with for years, and a reputation for finishing difficult custom projects without turning every disagreement into a war. We were not a giant company. We were the kind of company where I knew whose daughter had started college, whose mother was recovering from surgery, and which foreman always took his coffee black but left it untouched until the morning safety meeting was over. Every weekday, at 6:25, I walked the active site with a yellow carpenter's pencil tucked behind my right ear. I carried a small metal tape measure that had belonged to my Uncle Leon, the man who taught me to frame a wall square before he taught me to drive. The tape was scratched, heavy, and inaccurate past 20 feet, so I rarely used it for measuring. I carried it because it reminded me that every grand building was still a collection of small promises that had to line up. Paying people on time was one of those promises. Construction companies can look prosperous from the outside while suffocating inside. A job may show a profit on paper, but paper profit does not cover payroll on Friday if the owner pays on Monday 3 weeks later. We paid wages every Friday, subcontractor draws according to their agreements, equipment leases on fixed dates, insurance monthly, and suppliers based on terms that did not change because a client felt powerful. I kept a cash reserve, equal to roughly 6 weeks of ordinary operating expenses. That reserve was not a pile of spare money. It was protection against weather delays, a disputed change order, a broken crane, or a customer who paid late. It was the reason my employees could plan their lives without wondering whether my biggest client had checked his bank account. Grant Holloway came to us through Lena Ortiz, the project architect. Lena had worked with Reed-Built on 2 modern homes and a complicated historic renovation. She was precise, without being theatrical, and she had the rare ability to explain a design decision without insulting the person who had to build it. Grant's project was different from anything we had done. The property sat on 14 wooded acres outside the city, high enough that the western terrace caught the sunset over the river. The finished estate was expected to be worth around $12 million. Our construction contract was $5,080,000, not $12 million. That distinction mattered. The $12 million figure described the property Grant expected to own When the work was done, our contract covered the labor, materials, coordination, supervision, and risk we were taking to build a large part of it. The mansion had a limestone exterior, a steel and glass stair tower, a below-grade wine room, a guest wing, a pool house, and enough custom millwork to keep a cabinet shop busy for most of a year. Grant wanted it to serve as both a home and a statement piece for Holloway Meridian, his real estate investment company. He was planning an event called the Meridian Founders Weekend on October 18th. More than 100 investors, lenders, and business partners were supposed to tour the finished house before a private dinner on the terrace. The event was on the preliminary schedule before we signed the contract. Grant mentioned it in nearly every early meeting. "The house is the proof," he liked to say. "People invest in what they can touch." The payment structure was conventional for a project that size. Every month, Reed-Built submitted a progress application showing work completed, stored materials, approved change orders, retainage, and the amount due. Lena's firm reviewed the application, checked the work against the schedule of values, and either certified it or returned questions. Once certified, Grant had 10 calendar days to pay. The system was not designed to make the contractor rich before the owner. It was designed to keep one side from financing the other side's asset. By the time a payment application was submitted, much of the labor and material cost had already been incurred. Progress billing moved cash through the project in verified stages so everyone could keep performing. The clause Grant later ignored entered the contract during a meeting in his attorney's conference room. His lawyer had started with an owner-heavy form that gave Grant broad rights if we fell behind, but offered almost no practical remedy if he failed to pay. My construction attorney, Naomi Ellis, circled that imbalance in blue ink. "Performance has to be reciprocal," she said. "If the contractor defaults, the owner has remedies. If the owner fails to make an undisputed certified payment, the contractor needs a defined process too." Grant leaned back and asked whether I expected him not to pay. "No," I said. "I expect the contract to explain what happens if either of us does not do what we promised." Section 12.4 was negotiated for nearly 40 minutes. The final language was clear. If an undisputed certified progress payment remained unpaid after its due date, Reed-Built could deliver written notice of non-payment. Grant then had 7 calendar days to cure. If payment was still not received at the end of that cure period, we could suspend work after taking reasonable steps to secure the project and protect completed work, materials, and the public. The contract also provided a reasonable schedule extension for the period of suspension and the effects of restarting, plus documented shutdown and remobilization costs. It was not a magic button. It did not allow me to storm off because I was angry. It required a missed payment, written notice, time to fix the problem, and an orderly shutdown. The right came from that signed agreement. It was not something I assumed every contractor everywhere automatically had. Grant's attorney called the language unnecessary. Grant waved a hand and said, "Leave it in. I pay my obligations." Then he signed beneath it. At the time, I took that as confidence. Later, I realized he had treated the clause the way some people treat a fire extinguisher in a new building. Necessary for the paperwork, impossible to imagine using, and therefore easy to forget. The first 8 months went better than most large custom projects. By the time the 9th payment application came due, the project was a little more than halfway complete by value. Grant could be demanding, but he was also smart. He understood land, financing, and presentation. He could walk through a half-framed room and describe exactly how a future investor would experience it. He learned the names of my lead carpenters. He brought barbecue to the site after we set the main steel ridge beam. When a winter storm damaged temporary fencing, he approved the repair change order within an hour. Those moments mattered because they made what came later harder to read. A man who is difficult all the time is simple. A man who is generous when things serve him and controlling when they do not can keep people guessing much longer. The first signs were small. A payment arrived 4 days late because, according to Grant's controller, 2 signatures had been traveling. Then, a custom lighting decision came verbally during a walkthrough, with Grant insisting that written approval could catch up later. I stopped him beside the stair tower. "We can price the change today," I said, "but we are not ordering fixtures until the change is approved." He laughed. "Malcolm, do you think I'm going to deny telling you this?" "I think memory gets expensive on a $5 million job," I said. Lena covered a smile with her hand. Grant signed the change 2 days later. There were other pressures. He asked us to start stone backing before the revised exterior details were issued. He wanted the pool equipment upgraded, without extending the lead time. He requested Saturday work after telling a group of visitors that the project was ahead of schedule. Each request by itself had a business solution. We documented direction, price changes, tracked impacts, and kept moving. My site superintendent, Darius Cole, called our daily reports the boring truth. Weather, crew counts, deliveries, inspections, instructions, delays, photographs. Darius had been with me for 9 years. He was broad-shouldered, patient, and suspicious of any decision described as a favor. "Favors are just changes without paperwork," he said. By the spring, Grant had started using status in a sharper way. During one design meeting, a furniture consultant questioned whether the library paneling would be installed before her delivery window. I answered with the updated sequence and explained that a late veneer selection had moved the finish date by 6 working days. Grant cut me off. "The design team does not need construction excuses," he said. Then he turned to the consultant. "We'll handle the contractor." He said it lightly, almost charmingly, and the meeting moved on. But I noticed how the room changed. He was placing me below the people who imagined the house, even though my company was carrying the labor and money required to make their decisions real. Lena caught me afterward, near the temporary stairs. "That was unnecessary," she said. "It was useful," I replied. "Useful. It told me what he does when the schedule threatens the story he's selling." At that point, I still believed the answer was stronger documentation, not confrontation. Payment application number 9 covered structural steel completion, exterior framing, major mechanical rough-in, a portion of roofing, and stored custom windows. The gross work for the period was larger, but after retainage and previous payments, the amount due was $418,760. My project accountant prepared the backup. Darius verified quantities. Supplier invoices were attached. Photographs showed stored materials labeled for the project. We submitted on August 22nd. Lena's firm reviewed it for 5 days. They asked 2 questions about stored window units and one about the percentage complete on the West Terrace waterproofing. We answered with delivery receipts, dated photographs, and the inspection record. On August 27th, Lena certified the application in full. Her cover email went to Grant, his controller, me, and our project accountant. It stated that the work observed and documentation provided supported the certified amount. Payment was due 10 calendar days later, on September 6th. Nothing arrived on September 6th. I did not panic. One late day is not a crisis. I emailed Grant's controller the next morning. She responded that the payment was in process. On the 9th, she said Grant was reviewing project cash timing. On the 11th, I called her. Her voice dropped. "The application is approved," she said. "There is no issue with your backup." "Then what is the issue?" I asked. She paused long enough to answer without words. "You should speak with Grant." That was the first real discovery. The payment was not delayed because our work had failed inspection. It was not delayed because we had overbilled. The architect had approved it, and Grant's own controller had no documentation dispute. The problem was somewhere else. I met Grant at his downtown office the next afternoon. Holloway Meridian occupied the top 2 floors of a renovated warehouse, all dark wood, old brick, and quiet rooms. named after neighborhoods his company had developed. He greeted me with the same smile he used at ribbon cuttings. "This is temporary," he said before I sat down. "I have capital moving between two closings. You know how these things work." "I know our payment was certified," I said, "and I know it is overdue." He poured sparkling water into 2 glasses and slid one toward me. "You have a strong balance sheet. Carry me for a couple of weeks and I'll remember who helped when the next project comes." That sentence told me he had misunderstood both my business and the contract. A strong balance sheet did not mean $400,000 sat idle waiting to make a millionaire's timing easier. Reed-Built had money, but much of it was already assigned. The following Friday's gross payroll was $96,400. Payroll, taxes, and benefits added more. Our electrical subcontractor had $112,000 due under his progress draw. The mechanical contractor had $70,000. The custom window supplier required $84,000 before releasing the final shipment. The stone fabricator had $39,000 in approved work coming due. We also had equipment rentals, insurance, fuel, temporary power, and the ordinary bills from our other projects. The unpaid application represented work already installed and materials already purchased. Grant was not asking me to delay a profit distribution. He was asking Reed-Built to fund costs that belonged to his property. "We can discuss acceleration separately," I said, "but the certified payment needs to be paid." Grant's smile thinned. "You are making this more formal than it needs to be. The project is formal when money is due. I'm not refusing to pay you." "Then give me a date." He walked to the window and looked down at traffic. "End of next week." That would make the payment more than 2 weeks late. I asked him to confirm the date by email. He said his controller would handle it. Before I left, he added, "Do not let your accounting department spook the field." Founders Weekend is not moving. Back at our office, my controller, Denise Walker, closed the conference room door and put a 13-week cash flow forecast on the screen. Denise had spent 14 years in commercial construction accounting before joining Reed-Built. She did not raise her voice, and she did not soften numbers to protect feelings. A green line showed projected cash if Grant paid by the date he had promised. A red line showed projected cash if he did not. The red line crossed below our minimum operating reserve in 8 days and approached the payroll danger zone the week after that. "We can cover this Friday," she said. "We can cover next Friday by pulling from the reserve and delaying 2 non-critical purchases. After that, every day becomes a choice about who we make wait." "We have receivables from the medical office job," I said. "$126,000 expected next week," she answered. "And we have costs on that job too." "Malcolm, stop counting the same cash twice." I did not like the sharpness, but I needed it. My flaw had always looked respectable from the outside. I accepted more risk than I should because I wanted to prove I could handle it. When I was younger, that meant working late to fix someone else's mistake. As an owner, it meant carrying a client longer than the company should, because I did not want anyone to say Reed-Built had failed under pressure. Denise knew the difference between courage and unpaid financing. "What if we slow discretionary work and keep the critical path moving?" I asked. "That helps burn rate," she said. "It does not solve the principle. He owes us for verified work. If we keep spending because he asks, we train him that our reserve belongs to him." I called Lena and asked whether any quality issue had emerged since certification. "No," she said. "There are open items, but none changes the approved amount." She hesitated. "Grant asked me this morning whether I could revise the certificate to hold back $100,000 for schedule concerns. Can he identify defective or incomplete work worth $100,000? Not from what I've seen." I told him certification reflects completed work, not leverage for future speed. That was our second warning. Grant was trying to turn a payment delay into a dispute after the fact. For the next week, he acted as though speed and payment were unrelated. He added an evening coordination meeting. He asked Darius to increase the drywall crew. He pushed for the pool house glazing to be installed before the manufacturer's field technician was available. Each request came with some version of the same phrase. We all had to do what was necessary for October 18th. We kept working, because the contractual cure process had not begun, and because I still believed payment might arrive on Grant's promised date, but I tightened control. No new unapproved changes, no acceleration costs without written authorization. Every instruction confirmed by email. Darius added photographs of crew counts and completed areas to each daily report. Denise updated cash every morning instead of twice a week. On Thursday, the day before Grant's promised payment, a freight truck delivered the first half of the exterior limestone from Tennessee. The driver handed Darius a packet showing 6 crates, total weight just over 42,000 pounds. We inspected the stone, photographed every crate, and stored it on protected dunnage inside the fenced laydown area. The supplier invoice was already included in payment application 9. That delivery would later matter because Grant would claim the site had not received materials he had been billed for. At the time, it was just another line in the daily report. Friday came, payroll cleared, the payment did not. At 2:30, Grant called me directly. "I need you at the house Monday morning," he said. "I'm bringing several people through. I want confidence, not accounting drama. The payment you promised today has not arrived. It will, when. Malcolm, you are running a $5 million contract. Do not act like one invoice is an emergency. One approved invoice can be an emergency when the work behind it has already been funded." He exhaled. "Monday, 9 o'clock. Be professional." Then he ended the call. Denise was standing in my doorway. She had heard enough from my side to understand. "How much more are you willing to loan him without paperwork?" she asked. "I am not loaning him money." She pointed toward the cash flow forecast on my desk. "Then why are we paying his project costs while he keeps his cash?" That question followed me all weekend. Monday's tour was for 3 prospective investors in Holloway Meridian's new residential fund. Grant had the site cleaned beyond normal working condition. Temporary cords were lifted, material stacks covered, and the great room swept until the concrete floor looked almost polished. He wore a navy jacket with no tie and spoke about the house as a model of disciplined execution. I stayed near the edge of the group with Lena and answered technical questions when asked. At first, Grant was excellent. He explained how passive design features reduced energy demand. He credited Lena for preserving the river view. He praised our stone mock-up. Listening to him, I understood why people trusted him with large sums. He could connect details to a larger future and make that future feel inevitable. Then, one investor asked whether the house would be complete for Founders Weekend. Grant said, "Absolutely. We have the right people, and I know how to keep pressure on a schedule." He looked at me. "Tell them, Malcolm." I could have embarrassed him. I could have said the schedule depended on the overdue payment and pending acceleration decisions. Instead, I answered accurately. "The current schedule still targets the event date, but several owner decisions and payment items need prompt resolution to protect it." The investor nodded. Grant's expression did not change until the group moved into the gallery. Then he stepped close enough that only Lena and I could hear. "Do not qualify my commitments in front of my partners. I will not certify certainty the records do not support. You work for me. My company works under a contract with you. That distinction is why contractors stay contractors." Lena said, "Grant, the schedule has real dependencies." He turned to her. "I did not ask for a seminar." Then he faced me again. "The payment is being handled. Keep your people focused." The humiliation was controlled, almost quiet, which made it more revealing. He did not need to shout. He needed the room to understand who he believed had status and who did not. Later that afternoon, an email arrived from Grant's controller. It asked for a duplicate copy of payment application 9 and all backup, even though she had received the full package weeks earlier. Denise forwarded it to me with one line. They are building a reason after missing the date. We resent everything within 20 minutes. The certified application, Lena's approval, supplier invoices, delivery receipts, inspection confirmations, stored material photographs, daily logs, change order status. We also asked Grant to identify any specific disputed amount in writing. He did not. Instead, the next morning, he sent a message saying he was reviewing overall project performance and associated payment timing. It sounded official and said nothing. I replied that the certified payment remained due and requested immediate payment or written identification of any disputed item. His response came 4 hours later. Continue work. We will reconcile at the appropriate time. That was when the problem became more than a late check. The owner was directing continued performance while refusing to say when he would pay for work already approved. The credible explanation arrived from an unexpected place, but not through a secret informant or a dramatic leak. It was sitting in public business news. Denise found an article about Riverside Commons, a mixed-use development controlled by one of Grant's affiliates. A planned capital contribution from an institutional partner had been delayed after leasing projections were revised. The article described the delay as temporary. It also noted that a construction loan extension was under discussion. Could be unrelated, I said. It could, Denise answered. But he told you capital was moving between 2 closings. This is at least consistent with a liquidity squeeze. I called no one at Riverside. I made no accusation. Businesses face timing problems every day, and a delayed capital contribution is not proof of wrongdoing. But the pattern made sense. Grant had several large obligations and a public image to protect. Our payment was one pool of cash he believed he could postpone, because he assumed we would keep working. He was using vendor timing to solve an owner liquidity problem. 2 days later, he made that assumption explicit. We met in the mansion's temporary conference room, a framed future pantry with folding tables, rolled drawings, and a portable air conditioner that rattled every few minutes. Grant brought his operations director. Lena joined by video. Darius sat beside me with the latest 3-week schedule. Grant opened with a demand for extended weekday shifts and 2 additional Saturday crews. Darius explained the labor availability and the added cost. I said we could evaluate acceleration after the overdue payment was cured and the acceleration scope was approved. Grant leaned back. You are tying unrelated issues together. They are related through cash and performance. You have retainage coming. You have profit in the job. Use it. Retainage is not current cash, and projected profit is not a checking account. His operations director stared at the table. Grant said, "Every serious contractor carries owners. Serious contractors manage credit risk. We are not your lender." He smiled without warmth. "Be careful, Malcolm. There are firms that would take this project tomorrow for the visibility alone. Then they would still need the records, the subcontractors, the fabrication status, the site knowledge, and a legal basis to take over. I can replace anyone." The portable air conditioner clicked off. In the sudden quiet, Darius shifted in his chair. Grant continued. "And I can explain to every developer in this market why I had to replace them." There it was. Not a lawsuit yet. Reputation. The asset small contractors spend years building and can lose through one powerful person's version of events. I left that meeting with 2 risks that could not both be avoided. If I kept working at full speed, Reed Built could burn through its reserve, delay subcontractors, and eventually miss payroll on a profitable project. If I used the contract process and suspended work, Grant could call us unreliable, threaten claims, and tell the market we had abandoned the largest job we had ever won. What would you have done? Keep working to protect the biggest contract your company had ever won, or stop before one unpaid invoice endangered everyone who trusted you? Tell me which risk you would choose. That evening, I sat alone in our estimating room,
with the cash forecast, the contract, and the payroll calendar spread across a table. The answer I wanted was for Grant to pay and remove the choice. But a business owner cannot build a risk plan around someone else becoming reasonable. I had to decide what Reed Built would do if he did not. The next morning, I called Naomi Ellis. I did not ask her how to punish Grant. I asked her to review the contract, the payment history, and our records, then tell me what options we actually had. By noon, Denise had assembled a secure folder containing the signed agreement, all amendments, the schedule of values, payment application 9, Lena's certificate, proof of transmission, the payment due date, every follow-up email, the controller's statement that there was no backup issue, and Grant's written direction to continue work. Darius added daily reports through the previous day. I sent the package to Naomi and met her at 4. Naomi's office had no dramatic shelves of law books. It had 2 monitors, a round table, and a whiteboard covered with dates. She read section 12.4 aloud, then drew a line across the board. First question, she said. Was there a certified payment? Yes. Was it due? September 6th. Has Grant identified a specific good faith dispute over the certified amount? No. He asked for duplicate backup, and we provided it. Then he said he was reviewing overall performance. That may become his argument, but the current record matters. Next question. What does your clause require before suspension? I answered from memory. Written notice of non-payment, 7 calendar days to cure. If it remains unpaid, reasonable steps to secure and protect the work, then suspension. And notice must be delivered how? I checked the general conditions. Email to the designated representatives, plus overnight delivery to the notice address. Good! Details are where remedies live or die. She explained the clause in ordinary terms. We could not treat the missed payment as permission to leave immediately. The contract gave Grant a final defined opportunity to fix the default. Our notice had to identify the certified application, amount, due date, and contractual basis. If he paid within the cure period, we kept working. If he did not, we could suspend, but we still had duties. We had to protect openings, secure materials, maintain required safety controls, preserve temporary weather protection, and communicate with subcontractors. The contract also allowed a schedule extension reasonably connected to the suspension and restart, and reimbursement of documented shutdown and remobilization costs. That did not mean we could invent numbers. It meant we should track actual impacts. What is the risk? I asked. Several, Naomi said. He can argue the amount was disputed. He can claim your notice was defective. He can accuse you of slowing work before the cure period ended. He can threaten termination. Whether those arguments succeed depends on the contract, facts, and applicable law. My job is to make sure your conduct is as clean as the record says it is. And the business risk. That is yours. Denise, who had joined by video, answered for me. The business risk is that every day of full production consumes more cash we may not recover on time. Naomi nodded. Then do not confuse having a contractual option with having an easy choice. We drafted the notice carefully. It was firm without sounding theatrical. Reed Built identified payment application 9, the certified amount of $418,760, the September 6th due date, and the fact that no written dispute had identified any specific portion as improper. We cited section 12.4 and gave Grant 7 calendar days after receipt to cure. We stated that work would continue during the cure period, subject to the existing contract and approved scope, but that failure to cure could result in suspension after orderly site protection. We reserved the schedule and cost consequences provided by the agreement. We also invited immediate discussion. At 6:12 that evening, I sent the email to Grant and every designated notice recipient. Naomi's assistant arranged overnight delivery. The carrier confirmed delivery at 9:08 the next morning. The cure period would expire at the end of the following Tuesday. I wrote the deadline on a whiteboard in our project office. 7 days.
Grant called within 15 minutes. You sent me a default notice. I sent the notice required by the agreement. After everything I have done for your company. I looked through the office window at two carpenters installing blocking in the gallery ceiling. You hired us under a contract grant. We have done the work. The architect certified the payment. We need the payment. You are escalating a timing issue. The notice gives you time to cure it. You know what this does to our relationship. I know what non-payment does to 43 people and our subcontractors. He became quiet. Then his voice softened. Come to my office. We can solve this like businessmen. That afternoon, he offered $150,000 immediately, with the balance after Founders Weekend. In exchange, Reed Built would withdraw the notice, add evening shifts, and sign a statement that Payment Application 9 remained under reconciliation. The offer was tempting for about 10 seconds. $150,000 would cover immediate payroll pressure and part of the subcontractor draws. It would also change the record from a fully certified unpaid obligation into a vague reconciliation. We would surrender the countdown, spend even faster, and leave $268,760 outstanding with no dependable payment date. I cannot accept those terms, I said. Grant spread his hands. You told me cash flow was the issue. I'm giving you cash. You are giving us part of money already due while asking us to increase exposure and agree that the rest is uncertain. Then take the 150 without the statement. Does the notice remain in effect for the unpaid balance? No, we reset and work together. That leaves us exposed. His expression hardened. You are choosing a clause over a relationship. No, I am asking the relationship to follow the clause we both signed. On day 2, the first complication arrived. The forecast called for heavy rain, and a section of the west roof still had temporary protection around a future skylight opening. If we suspended at the deadline without finishing that protection, water could damage installed framing and interior materials. The clause required reasonable site protection, and common sense required the same thing. Darius proposed moving a small crew to complete the temporary curb and membrane before the cure period expired. That work cost us money, but stopping carelessly would have turned a payment dispute into property damage. Grant will say we are slowing critical path work, Darius warned. We document why the protection is necessary, I said. We keep the planned crews through the cure period. No games. He studied me. And after Tuesday, if there is no payment, we secure the site. Darius folded his arms. You know some of the guys will think that means layoffs. I know. You also know remobilizing trades is not like flipping a switch. The drywall crew has another job waiting. The stone installers may move to a hotel project. We could lose weeks. I know that too. He did not praise the decision. He made me face its cost. Then be sure you are not proving a point with people's hours. That landed because it was exactly what I feared. I told him the truth. I am trying to keep one client from consuming the cash that pays all their hours. On day 3, Grant's operations director emailed a list of alleged performance concerns: incomplete landscaping coordination, slow millwork submittals, inconsistent cleanup, and a 2-week risk to the pool house finish. Several items were real project issues. Large jobs always have issues. None had been identified as a basis to reject Payment Application 9, and some involved owner decisions. We answered each item with dates, responsible parties, current status, and supporting records. Lena confirmed that the certified work remained properly valued. That evening, Grant called Darius instead of me. He offered to authorize overtime, directly, if Darius would keep the field moving, regardless of whatever Malcolm is doing with legal. Darius ended the call and wrote a report immediately. I told him all direction goes through Reed Built, he said. You did right. He is trying to split the office from the field. He is trying every lever he knows. On day 4, Denise showed me the updated cash forecast. We had received the medical office payment, but 2 other receivables were delayed by ordinary processing. We could still meet payroll, but the reserve was now supporting Grant's project at a rate of roughly $28,000 per working day, depending on deliveries and subcontractor activity. "Look at the shape of the line," she said. The red projection sloped down toward a point I had promised myself never to reach. "I keep thinking about the contract value," I admitted. $5,080,000. If we stop, we could lose the remaining revenue. "Revenue is not cash," Denise said, "and revenue bought by financing someone who will not pay can make you poorer." That was the midpoint I had resisted. Continuing unpaid would not be loyalty to the project. It would make Reed-Built Grant's involuntary lender, except a lender chooses the amount, sets terms, evaluates collateral, and charges for risk. We had done none of those things. We were simply being told to advance more labor and materials because Grant assumed stopping would hurt us more than non-payment hurt him. On day 5, Grant changed tactics again. He invited me to the mansion at sunset. No investors, no staff. He stood on the unfinished terrace looking over the river. For a few minutes he spoke plainly. Riverside Commons had a capital delay. A lender wanted additional reserves. 2 closings had shifted. He had enough assets, he said, but not enough free cash in the right place at the right moment without disrupting other commitments. "I built my company by managing timing," he said. "Sometimes vendors carry a month. Then everyone gets paid. You should have told me before the due date. Would you have agreed? Maybe not under these terms. But we could have discussed controlled options before you defaulted." He nodded as if that answer disappointed him. "Founders' weekend affects hundreds of millions in future investment. You are risking that over $400,000. No, you are risking it by withholding an approved payment and ordering more work." He looked at me for a long time. "You really will stop. If the cure period expires unpaid, I will follow the contract and destroy the schedule. The schedule impact will come from the payment default and the suspension it triggers. You say that like words change reality. Written words define responsibility when memories become convenient." For the first time, I saw concern break through his confidence, not fear of me. Fear that the deadline he had treated as my burden might become his. On day 6, his attorney sent a letter stating that any suspension would be wrongful, because Grant was evaluating potential offsets related to schedule performance. Naomi responded that no specific offset had been timely identified against the certified payment, that the architect's certification remained unchanged, and that Reed-Built continued to perform during the cure period. She requested payment and asked them to identify the exact contractual and factual basis for any disputed amount. They did not provide one. Tuesday arrived, the last day. At 8 in the morning, I held a meeting with our project team and major subcontractors. I did not promise what I could not guarantee. I explained that an owner payment remained overdue, a contractual notice period would expire that night, and Reed-Built was preparing for a possible suspension. Payroll for our direct employees would be made. Approved subcontractor amounts would be addressed according to our obligations and available project funds with direct communication rather than silence. I told them we would not ask anyone to continue supplying labor or materials blindly. The electrical foreman asked, "Are we coming in Wednesday?" "I will confirm by 6 tomorrow morning," I said. The room felt heavier than any argument with Grant. These were the people who would absorb the consequence first. At 4:45, Grant texted, "Payment solution in process. Do not take irreversible action." I replied, "Please provide confirmation of full payment before the cure period expires. We remain available to coordinate." At 7:30, no funds had arrived. At 9, no wire confirmation. At 11:58, I checked the account one final time with Denise. Nothing. The cure period expired at midnight. At 5:30 Wednesday morning, I sent the suspension notice. It cited the original non-payment notice, confirmed expiration of the cure period, and stated that Reed-Built would suspend affected work under Section 12.4 after completing the planned safety and protection measures. By 6, Darius had the site shutdown checklist in hand. We did not throw tools into trucks and disappear. Electricians made temporary circuits safe. The roofing crew checked the west opening and sealed the final membrane edge. We secured fuel, locked tool storage, photographed every room, verified temporary heat and dehumidification settings, protected the limestone, inventoried owner-furnished materials, and posted updated emergency contacts. A small safety team would continue limited inspections because protecting the site was part of an orderly suspension, not continued construction. By 10:40, the machines had gone quiet. The telehandler sat with its forks lowered. Sawdust settled in the gallery where cabinet blocking had stopped mid-sequence. Half a dozen hard hats hung on hooks inside the project office, waiting for people who had expected another full day. The silence made the size of the house feel different. Without crews, it was no longer a promise moving toward October 18th. It was an expensive collection of unfinished decisions. Grant arrived at 11:12 with his operations director and a photographer who had been scheduled to document progress. He walked through the gate, saw the empty drive, and called me. "What have you done?" "We completed the safety and protection plan and suspended affected work under the contract. You abandoned my project." "No, the site is secured. Required monitoring continues." The suspension followed the missed certified payment, written notice, 7-day cure period, and the procedure in Section 12.4. You will reverse this today. Full cure and restart terms need to be addressed first. By noon, his attorney had sent a letter accusing Reed-Built of anticipatory breach, project abandonment, and intentional interference with Founders Weekend. Naomi answered with documents, not adjectives. She attached the signed clause, the certified application, delivery confirmations for both notices, and the shutdown checklist. She also proposed a meeting with Grant, his lender representative, the project architect, and the parties' advisors to determine cure and restart conditions. That afternoon, Grant told 2 subcontractors that Reed-Built had walked off. Both called Darius. We sent each subcontractor the same factual notice. Work was contractually suspended because of an uncured owner payment default. The site remained protected. No one was authorized to perform affected work without Reed-Built's written direction. We did not ask them to attack Grant. We gave them information they needed to protect themselves. The decisive meeting was set for Friday at Holloway Meridian's office. The lender's construction risk director, Margaret Chen, would attend because the mansion loan required updated schedule and cost information. Lena attended as architect and payment certifier. Grant brought his attorney and operations director. Naomi sat beside me. Denise joined with the cash and cost records. Grant opened calmly. He said the project faced schedule underperformance, that Reed-Built had used a technical clause to gain leverage, and that the entire certified amount was subject to owner review because several scopes remained incomplete. It was the strongest version of his defense. He did not deny that payment was late. He argued that withholding was justified by broader performance concerns and that suspension was disproportionate. Margaret asked one question. Was payment application 9 approved? Lena answered. Yes. I certified $418,760 after review of installed work, stored materials, inspections, and backup. Grant said certification did not eliminate his right to evaluate offsets. Naomi slid a document across the table. Please identify the written notice of a specific offset issued before the payment due date. His attorney said the concerns developed over time. I placed the email timeline beside the application. September 7th, Controller, payment in process. September 9th, Grant reviewing cash timing. September 11th, no issue with backup. Then Grant's promise to pay by the following Friday. Only after that date passed did generalized performance language appear. Margaret read silently. Next came the delivery records. Grant had suggested in his letter that stored limestone and window materials were not adequately supported. Darius's reports showed dates, crate counts, photographs, invoice references, and protected storage locations. The West Terrace waterproofing inspection was attached. Lena confirmed the valuation. Then Denise presented the money. She did not show our entire company finances. She showed project cash flow, labor, subcontractor obligations, material commitments, and the daily cost of continuing after non-payment. The certified amount reimburses substantial cost already incurred, she said. Continued full production would require rebuilt to advance additional owner project costs without an agreed credit arrangement. Grant looked at me. You had sufficient reserves. Reserves protect the company, I said. They are not an unlimited extension of credit to one client. Naomi turned to the notice record. The first notice identified the amount, application, due date, and cure period. Email delivery was confirmed. Overnight delivery was confirmed. Rebuilt continued regular work during all 7 days. Daily reports showed crew counts, activities, weather protection, and no deliberate slowdown. The final notice was sent only after midnight passed without payment. The shutdown checklist documented safe conditions and limited monitoring. Finally, she opened the signed agreement to Section 12.4. No dramatic reveal. Just the words Grant had accepted. Missed undisputed certified payment. Written notice. 7 calendar days to cure. Right to suspend after reasonable protection. Schedule extension. Documented shutdown and remobilization costs. Grant's attorney argued that the payment had become disputed through the performance letter. Lena answered before Naomi could. The concerns listed in that letter did not reverse my certification, and several were unrelated to the work billed. I was asked whether I could reduce the certificate for schedule leverage. I declined. The room changed. Margaret asked Grant, "Was the payment withheld because you believed the billed work was not performed or because you had a cash timing problem?" He did not answer immediately. Then he said, "Both factors were under review." His own email appeared next. It was the message directing me to continue work and saying the parties would reconcile at the appropriate time. Beside it was the controller's statement that there was no backup issue. The contradiction was simple. Grant had treated the payment as a timing tool while demanding uninterrupted performance. The record did not support his claim that we had suddenly abandoned the project over a genuine pre-existing dispute. Margaret closed the folder. From the lender's risk perspective, work will not restart on verbal assurances. The payment default must be cured, restart costs documented, and future construction funds controlled. Grant looked at her. "This is my project, and the loan depends on reliable administration," she said. No one declared me a hero. No one handed me the mansion. The consequence was more practical and more expensive. Grant had to fund the overdue certified payment in full. He also had to place the next 2 projected progress payments into a controlled construction escrow, with releases based on Lena's independent certification. Documented shutdown costs would be reimbursed. Remobilization would be priced transparently. The completion schedule would receive a reasonable extension based on actual trade availability and restart effects, not on Grant's original event date. Any acceleration would require separate written authorization and funding. Grant asked whether I would return under those terms. I thought about the threat to replace us, the empty site, and the people waiting for direction. Walking away might have satisfied my pride, but it would have created new uncertainty for employees and subcontractors and invited a longer dispute. Finishing under safer controls protected the business better than winning an argument and abandoning the remaining work. "Yes," I said. "If the cure funds clear, the escrow is established and the restart agreement is signed." He nodded once. For the first time since the payment became late, he was not asking for trust. He was agreeing to a system that did not require it. The overdue money cleared the following Monday. The escrow agreement took 2 more days. Reed Built received documented shutdown costs for site protection, equipment standby, and administrative work, and we agreed on a remobilization amount tied to actual trade commitments. Darius rebuilt the schedule 1 subcontractor at a time. The drywall crew had given part of its slot to another project. The stone installers could return only after finishing a hotel lobby. Founders Weekend stayed on October 18th, but the mansion tour was reduced to completed exterior areas, the great room, and a professionally finished presentation space. Grant had to tell his investors that the full house would open later. That was his professional consequence. Extra financing controls, added costs, a delayed completion, and a public promise, narrowed by a private decision to use our cash flow as leverage. Our people were paid. We met with every major subcontractor and explained the restart sequence before asking anyone to commit. Nobody was required to finance the gap in silence. The project finished 11 weeks after the original substantial completion target, including suspension effects, trade availability, and approved added work. Grant and I never became friends. We became precise. Meetings had agendas. Decisions had deadlines. Payment releases came through independent certification and escrow. He stopped calling documentation bureaucracy because documentation was now the reason his project could move without either side pretending trust had been restored. 6 months later, Reed Built changed 3 things. Denise began presenting client concentration risk at every quarterly review. We increased the minimum reserve required before taking on a project above a certain size, and we created a payment default playbook, so no project manager would have to invent a response under pressure. It included notice addresses, approval records, cash exposure reports, shutdown planning, and early consultation with qualified advisors. The lesson was not to stop work faster. The lesson was to recognize risks sooner and follow the agreement exactly. That project taught me something I had understood in numbers, but not fully in my bones. Revenue is not profit, and profit is not cash available for Friday payroll. A contract can be profitable while delayed payment drains the company carrying it. Progress billing exists, so verified value moves through a project as work is performed. Clear scope, approved milestones, inspection records, daily logs, delivery receipts, and written communication are not signs of distrust. They are how responsible people preserve facts when pressure changes the story. Notice, requirements matter too. Our clause did not let me walk away the moment a payment was late. It required a specific trigger, written notice, time to cure, and a safe, documented suspension. The right came from our negotiated contract. Other contracts and laws vary by jurisdiction, and real disputes may require advice from qualified legal, financial, or construction professionals. This story is general education, not personal legal or financial advice. What term in a contract has protected your work when a relationship changed? Share it in the comments. I once thought professionalism meant carrying every burden without letting anyone see the strain. Now I know dignity is not protected by how calmly you absorb broken promises. It is protected before the crisis, when responsibilities are written clearly and both sides understand that every contract has a consequence.